Thank you, Sophie. Coming up on tonight's Look East, more flooding, power cuts and school closures as the region takes a battering from the latest storm, while many are still mopping up from the last one.
Once you've got water in your house, you're done. You can't do anything. That's the most depressing thing, knowing that could happen again and again and again and again.
And Sarah will be here with a full forecast. Also tonight, the bereaved father calling for tighter regulations on e-bike batteries after his partner and children died at their home in Cambridge. We get an exclusive look at the country's fastest AI supercomputer. But why do we need it?
Without the compute, without the AI capability, science is held back. With these capabilities, we can really drive our discovery process 10, 100 times faster than without it.
And Rory Bremner is in the studio to talk about impressions, politics and playing Chris Tarrant on stage. Another storm has made its presence felt across the region today. High winds and heavy rain overnight and through most of the day have led to almost 100 schools being closed, severe disruption on the roads and rail network and more flooding. Zoe O'Brien has spent the day in Suffolk, which yet again has been badly hit.
It was a disrupted start to the day in Suffolk. Traffic around the closed Orwell Bridge. Cars broken down after hitting floodwater. Even on foot, it wasn't pleasant. Well, the Orwell Bridge was closed at midnight last night, and it's an unusual sight to see it so quiet during the day. These closures always cause controversy. Traffic has been backed up all around Ipswich this morning, many people choosing not to leave home to work from home instead. But National Highways says they have to make their decisions based on the forecast, that it's always about safety. During Storm Babette, homes in Needham Market were flooded, so in preparation for Ciarán, they dug their own ditch.
That's probably about 4 foot deep at its deepest point. Banked the earth up, hoping that would slow the flow of the water off the field so the drainage could cope.
Unfortunately, the newly built banks burst.
That's the most depressing thing, knowing that could happen again and again and again and again. That is really, really frightening.
These flood defences put in by Daniel weren't enough this time to stop the water breaching his doors for the third time in 2 weeks.
So when the water floods off the field, it flood through the garden and then that come up through the house the other week. So I've put 4 soil pipes straight through the garage to try and keep the water level below the doors. And this morning I got up and the ditch that one of the neighbours kindly dug with his mate was holding fine. So I went off to work until the other half phones me, says, you've got to come back, it's flooded through, it's washed the ditch away. So I swiftly turned around and come back.
Across Suffolk, more than 80 schools were closed. Hundreds of homes were without power and roads were underwater. Trees came down and the rain kept on coming. Well, we can see in this ditch here just how fast the water is moving. Behind me, it's burst its banks and come out onto the road, which means, like many in the county today, it's completely impassable for most vehicles. Both lanes of the bridge reopened by 12:30 when the wind calmed. But it's not over yet. There's flood warnings in place tonight for the rivers Brett, Gipping, some areas near Haverhill and the Broads. It's been a difficult day for many, and there's a few more hours to get through yet. Zoe O'Brien, BBC Look East.
Well, the east of the region seems to have taken the brunt of the storm today. The winds were not as high as originally predicted, but many areas were still affected by the heavy rain and flooding, as Robbie West reports.
A flood barrier made from old shopping bags filled with compost, sand and gravel. In Steeple Bumpstead in Essex, this is what Peter had to do to try and protect his home.
The water level in the road, it got up to the top of the curb. And the water then poured down the drive and split into 2 streams, one through past the front door and one past the back door. And my wife phoned me in quite some distress.
In Norfolk, people were also preparing for the storm. Residents of Ferguson Way in Attleborough spent the morning filling sandbags, getting ready for any potential flooding. As the day went on, roads across both Essex and Norfolk became tricky to pass, and in some cases, they closed altogether. The storm caused a handful of schools to close in both counties and more than 1,000 homes lost power. The waterways have also been affected by the storms, with the Broads Authority asking people in Norfolk not to travel by boat during the worst of the weather.
So when the weather's pleasant, you can see boats moored up, and you can see the edge of the water, the banking, and it's a really pretty sight. But this is the worst I've seen it in a long, long time.
At the Swan Inn in Horning, the assistant manager told me that high water levels mean that they can't have people moor their boats at the moment.
So we've moved the garden furniture out of the way to one side and stacked it up, ready for the incoming storm that's forecast. Whilst we do encourage people to come and moor with us and come in and eat and drink, it isn't safe to do so at the minute.
Trains were suspended at Marks Tay in Essex, but late this afternoon the line reopened. On the coast in both Essex and Norfolk, winds reached up to 70 miles per hour. In Great Yarmouth, the clothing shop Peacocks lost its sign due to the high winds. Norfolk Fire Service, who were out in Acle earlier today pumping flood water, said they expect the storm to continue until the weekend.
We will see how it plays out, but we remain prepared. We're expecting more bad weather for the weekend, probably wet weather, and with the fields already wet, we'll see how that works out. But everybody's planned, everyone's prepared, and the priority for us is now to keep people and the community safe.
In both Essex and Norfolk, people travelling today have been affected by the storm. The emergency services are closely monitoring the weather and are asking people to still be cautious. Robbie West, BBC Look East.
Well, this storm comes on the heels of Storm Babette, which caused serious flooding in Suffolk. I asked Kevin Hiscock, Professor of Environmental Sciences at the UEA, why certain places had suffered so badly.
We had previous rainfall in October, the soils were saturated, so conditions were just right, unfortunately, for flooding to occur. But it was an exceptional rainfall total. The storm event got rather stuck over Suffolk and didn't blow out into the North Sea, and so the totals just added up. So we don't see that very often. In fact, those 3 days of rain are the worst 3 days in the historic record, so it's unusual to have that kind of volume of rainfall.
Is it also to do with how prepared we are or unprepared we are for that kind of rainfall?
Well, we certainly have in the past built houses on floodplains, which has exposed us then to the risk. I mean, rivers will naturally flood from time to time when we have a historic rainfall event like we just had. So we need to think about building resilience into the way we build new housing estates, particularly with climate change. We expect events to be more frequent like we've just experienced. With more warmth in the atmosphere, there'll be more water vapour in the atmosphere and heavier rainfall totals. In hydrology, we talk in terms of slowing the flow. So if we can make the catchment a bit more able to absorb the rainfall, as opposed to in the past dredging and straightening the channel, the rainwater would then, or the flood water would go down the river quickly and pile up in some downstream areas.
And when it comes to development, in some cases they're building pavements and things that actually will absorb the water as well.
Yes, a permeable paving where you have the tiling for the car park, but without any kind of cement grout, so the rainfall can seep through the paved area and again into the ground, and that slows down the flow. It also helps to recharge the aquifers, so you're actually storing the water as a valuable water resource.
Some of the viewers who've contacted us say that actually, drainage isn't being looked after in the way it used to, dredging isn't being done in the way it used to. Is that something that you see as playing a major part as well?
It is the case that in our older towns and cities, the infrastructure isn't able to cope with, well, first of all, the increased volume of rainfall that we've seen, for example, if that's the future with climate change, and the increased number of houses too, in terms of the amount of impermeable surfaces and runoff into the drainage system is just overloaded. So certainly where lives are at risk, you would want to build up the flood protection to protect those people. But in other areas we can have infiltration ponds and this sort of greener approach to managing that flood water.
Professor Hiscock, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next tonight, a father whose partner and 2 young children were killed in a fire caused by an e-bike battery says there must be tougher regulations on the devices. Scott Pedden spent 4 weeks in an induced coma after the fire at their home in Cambridge in June. He tells his story and how he's now dreading life without them.
My mum and my dad broke the news to me. I lost my girlfriend, my son, my daughter and our 2 dogs. She was the most amazing person in the world. I miss her so much. Lily, she would have been 9 in January. Her and her brother Oliver had the most amazing relationship. It was the day before work. I had chucked the bike on charge as I do every single night. We were all woken by an almighty bang. My bike was spitting out flames from the ground floor all the way up to the 2nd floor. I screamed, "Gemma, the kids, pass me the kids," and I heard a voice from her saying, "I can't get out." I just continued to call for them to jump out the window. I throw the kids out the window, throw the dogs out the window, throw me something but it was too late. I basically just crawled backwards and collapsed on the trampoline that we had in the garden for the kids. The last thing I remember from that night is someone getting laid next to me and them doing CPR on them, which I don't know if was my son or my daughter. My son was pronounced dead at hospital. My daughter and my girlfriend were pronounced dead at the house. No one had ever told me that these things can overheat and explode. No one ever told me about the lithium batteries give off an absolute toxic gas. There needs to be a law about buying second-hand batteries. They need to be checked and MOT'd, because you don't want to be the next person that has to go through what I've just gone through. I am filled with so much guilt. If I had just kept with my bicycle and going to work, none of this would have happened. I want my old life back, basically. I had a happy life. I had a decent job, a decent home, a beautiful girlfriend, 2 loving kids. I was set. I was so happy.
Scott Pedden telling his heartbreaking story, and there is information on safe ways to purchase, use and charge e-bikes and e-scooters on the government website, that's gov.uk. Time now for a quick roundup of some other news. Firefighters have rescued a man whose car crashed into the front of a house in Essex. Crews were called to Duncan Road in Colchester. They carried the man out on a stretcher. He was conscious and treated at the scene. The Conservatives no longer lead and run Peterborough City Council after more than 2 decades. A motion of no confidence in the leader Wayne Fitzgerald and his administration was passed at a heated council session last night. Mohammed Farouk from the independent Peterborough First group was elected the new leader. An award-winning poet found dead after he went missing at a music festival in Northamptonshire will receive a posthumous degree. 27-year-old Boyega Odumbanju was last seen at the Shambhala Festival in August, where he was due to perform. His body was found 5 days later. He'd been studying for a PhD at the University of Hertfordshire. A mother in Northamptonshire says her son was forced to miss the first half term of the school year because his school transport was unexpectedly cancelled. Lucas has ADHD and used to get a taxi to school arranged by the local authority. When it failed to turn up at the start of this term, his mother was told she should have reapplied, even though he wasn't moving schools.
Every day is a family day for 12-year-old Lucas on the right. He hasn't been to school since July because the taxi arranged by the local council was cancelled without warning.
4th September rolls round, he's up at 6:15 in the morning, school uniform on, packed lunch sorted, raring to go, no taxi. So I emailed the transport team saying what's going on, and they said the taxi contract has been cancelled.
Lucas has ADHD and possible autism. He attends a special school miles from his home. The council told his mum Michelle she should have reapplied for transport, because he was moving from year 6 to 7. But as he was staying at the same school, she says that doesn't make sense.
How has this made you feel?
Furious. They're missing out on school, they're missing out on the friends, they're missing out on that social interaction and the routine that they need.
And I'm missing school, because I can make great things if I was in school. Oh.
So what kind of things do you do at school that you really enjoy doing?
My favourite is ICT. I will not lie though. I mean, I'm wanting to become a video game coder when I'm older.
North Northamptonshire Council say everyone is required to reapply for transport between year 6 and year 7, even if they're continuing to attend the same school site. Unfortunately, applications received after the beginning of term may be delayed. For Lucas's family, that delay, they say, has been far too long. Kate Bradbrook, BBC Look East.
And since we spoke to the family, they've had some good news. Lucas's application for transport was approved by the council last night and he was back at school today. Lots still to come on the programme tonight. I'll be chatting to Rory Bremner about his latest acting role, and of course we'll have the latest on the weather with Sarah.
Yes, Ciarán might be on its way out now, but there's still more wet weather in the forecast and already saturated ground. I've got those details later.
The fastest AI supercomputer in the UK has been built in Cambridge. It's part of a government-funded project involving the University of Cambridge and major tech companies. And it was announced yesterday at the Artificial Intelligence Safety Summit in Bletchley. It's cost hundreds of millions of pounds. So why do we need it? Our technology correspondent Janine Machin has been for an exclusive look.
This is Dawn, named to mark a new era of UK technology. It's the country's fastest AI supercomputer, and it's housed in a high-security data centre at the University of Cambridge.
You can barely hear yourself think in here. This is 95 decibels of noise. You have to wear earplugs for safety, but that's the sound of the system which cools this computer. We have 7,000 processors in here performing 19 million calculations per second. Now that generates a lot of heat. This place is air and water cooled for energy efficiency.
But why do we need it?
Without the compute, without the AI capability, science is held back. Look at cancer research. Cancer has been driven by genomics, huge amounts of data. We just can't process it. With machines like this, our researchers can process 100 times more data. So they can do 2 years' worth of research in 1 week. In Cambridge, we've got some of the world's greatest minds. They're bounded by the resources they have. So if we bring this resource to Cambridge, we can unlock that imagination.
And someone who's particularly excited about that potential is Professor Anil Madhavapedi.
So one of the biggest challenges facing us right now is climate change. And we've been struggling in the UK to try to come up with the computing capacity we need to tackle this challenge. We've taken huge amounts of data, observations about our planet, things from satellites, from drones, from on-the-ground sensors, and we pull those together and we look for insights based on neural networks. And doing this approach requires huge amounts of computation resources.
The government has invested £900 million in this project. This is just phase 1. But critics argue it's not enough to keep up with the Silicon Valley companies which spend billions on this kind of tech, and that by the time it's fully operational, it could already be out of date.
It's taken just 6 months from start to finish, working with our partners at Dell and at Intel to really get that system on the ground and used by scientists quickly. Of course, we need continual investment to keep refreshing those things. But really in the UK, what we've always done is just don't throw money at things, just think smart. So be smart with the money you've got, get it on the ground quickly and make that step change.
These teams want AI regulation, similar to that for medical research. The university already has an institute looking at its ethics. It is an emerging technology that they want to be used safely to benefit everyone. Janine Machin, BBC Look East in Cambridge.
Fascinating, isn't it? Now, do you live near a mobile phone mast? Did you have a chance to say whether you wanted one or not? Of course, we all rely on our mobile phones and we need the infrastructure in place to make them work, but it can be controversial. It's what Amelia is looking into on this week's Politics East, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the part of Politics East where we ask people to get in touch with things that are annoying them in their communities. And Jo Jones sent me an email because she's not happy that a 17-metre high mobile phone mast is going to be put pretty much right outside her house. Now, as you said, Susie, of course, we do need these masts if we want 5G connectivity. We all use our mobile phones. But Jo's argument is that there are better places to put them than in a residential street like hers. She's also a bit dumbfounded because actually if you walk 5 minutes round the corner, there's already a mobile phone mast there. So she's saying, why do we need another one?
I think there are better places to site these masts. Industrial estates, business parks, the hospital, where apparently a 5G signal is quite intermittent. But we were told initially by our local councillor that we couldn't throw the NIMBY card. And then when the letter that they produced came round, about 2 months after we found out about this, it said all we could comment on was the site and the appearance. To me, that sounds like we were forced to being NIMBYs, so anyone who criticises us for being NIMBYs, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you.
So has Jo been able to object?
Well, that's the point, really. She doesn't feel that her voice and that of the other residents around there has really been listened to. So that's something I'm going to be putting to the politicians on Sunday. We've spoken to the mobile phone company Three. They've given us this statement saying, while we do try to keep masts as unobtrusive as possible, they do need to be situated to where people will be using the service.
And as always, you want people to get in touch.
I'd love to people to get in touch. I mean, there will be lots of other Joes across the region, I'm sure, that are frustrated with this. Not just about phone masts, though. Whatever it is, fly tipping, speeding drivers, overflowing bins, send me an email. There it is on your screen now. And that's Politics East, Sunday, BBC One at 10.
Lovely. Thanks a lot, Amelia. Now, do you remember the famous coughing case from the TV show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The whole intriguing story has been turned into a stage play called Quiz, which is currently on tour in the region. Chris Tarrant is played by the impressionist Rory Bremner, who popped into the Lucky studio between his matinee and evening performances at the Norwich Theatre Royal.
I've known Chris for a long time and he's still teasing me about it. I still get these texts from Chris saying, "You're absolutely nothing like me at all. Who are you being? It's not even close." But I know it is. It's been in my head. It's been sort of locked and loaded, so it's great to get the chance to do the play. I'm hoping he's going to come and see it. We're running out of time. We're only a few weeks left on the tour and only a couple of days left in Norwich if he wants to come up here. But it's fun. It's a voice I have in my head. And he's a big character. He's a very nonchalant guy. He's very laid back. If you said the world's going to end in 4 minutes, he'd say, "Oh, okay, just got a couple of minutes here, I might go fishing or whatever." So he's fun to do, and there's a part where Chris gets asked if he wants to do the show and he sort of gets to get talked into it, a bit like the guy who turned down the Beatles. He nearly turned down Millionaire, so that's fun, and we get the whole backstory.
So you say you know Chris. I mean, what's it like actually doing someone you know? I mean, do you worry about whether he likes it?
No, I think he knows he's in good hands, but he does tease me all the time. So he says, "You're taking the food out of my children's mouth. Why did they get the monkey when they could have got the organ grinder?" So it's actually great fun, and it's nice to do the character over a longer time, because normally it would just be part of a sort of sketch or part of a stand-up routine. But this is the whole. But I have to really keep up to the mark, because all the rest of the cast, they're all playing 4 or 5 different parts, and at such speed and pace, and I'm just kind of thinking, wow, I'm in awe of them, really. But he sort of sits at the centre of the show, but there's all these actors and characters around. It's the most fun I've had on stage, actually. It really is. It's great fun to do.
And it's obviously about the coughing case, and it went to court and everything, but the play doesn't actually come down adamantly on one side or the other, whether it's true or not.
There are so many things going on, because it's, did they do it, didn't they do it? The first half of the case is the case of the prosecution, and so people get to vote, the audience get to vote. You've got little sort of keypads, and you get to vote on the Coronation Street question as well. Okay, so who is Audrey's daughter? Is it Janice, Gail, Linda, or Sally? And you get to vote at the end. But in the second half, we shuffle the pack a little bit. We introduce a little bit more context. You get to meet the couple. It's very tender, actually, and you're hoping to turn the audience round. So when they vote at the end, about sort of 30%, 40% change their minds, but the audiences are absolutely loving it. I've rarely been in a thing where the audience, they enjoy the show, they laugh during the show, but they talk about it on the way home, because it's all about truth, how you tell a story. Is it confirmation bias? Are you just hearing what you want to hear?
So it's quite different from what you normally do, the
yes.
political satire.
It is.
I'm interested whether you think it's harder now to do political satire.
I know. I mean, we had a lot of clowns up until last year? What was the year of the year? We had three prime ministers. But next year, I mean, we'll be an election year, and we have to be ready for Rishi. Rishi Sunak is a little bit, like I said, a slightly camp Tony Blair, and we'll see how that goes. And of course, with Keir Starmer, who's a friend of mine, Matt Ford, does him very well. Talks about saying the Metropolitan Police, this voice from the back of the throat. So, and Trump will be back next year. Trump features in the play, just a little one-liner, but there'll be a lot of Trump. So, he'll be back to the day job next year, I'm sure, Susie, and you can watch then.
Thanks, Rory.
Pleasure.
What an amazing talent he is. And I asked him, Zara, you know, whether he has to really work on it, but he just says it kind of comes. What an amazing talent.
I don't want to know about that talent. It's like me, it just comes. It just comes when I'm doing the weather. We've got lots to talk about, of course, because Storm Ciarán came through, packed a punch, I mean a really big wallop in the south of the UK. For us, it has brought us some impacts, as we've been hearing earlier in the programme. Not the significant winds that have been seen elsewhere, but enough to do some damage along the coast. I just picked 3 pictures at random. I have to step out the way for this one, actually. Norfolk, Suffolk, and of course Essex, which is where we saw the strongest of the winds, and we had the most severe of the weather warnings earlier on. No weather warnings with us now. Thought I'd take a little look at what happened with Ciarán this afternoon across the east. 48 miles an hour was our peak gust, and we saw more than an inch of rain at Wattisham. That has led us to have 5 flood warnings this evening and 30 flood alerts. We did not have them yesterday evening. Here's the big curl of cloud, which was Ciarán, so you can see it is moving away, and also it's filling out, which means that the winds are lessening all the time. We're not completely done with wet weather though, as you will see in the forecast, because it is much more palatable for tomorrow. But then if I step out the way again, you can see for Saturday we've got this wet weather system moving in, and like I said last night, in some parts of the east we had double the amount of average rainfall for October, so we really don't need any more. But as we go through the night tonight, things are drying out. We get some clearer weather into tomorrow morning, and in sheltered rural spots could be as low as 5 or 6 degrees, so we'll feel a little bit cooler tomorrow, but it's dry. There's some sunshine, bit of a breeze, nothing like the winds we have seen. That wind coming in from the west could blow a few showers our way at the end of the day, especially further south. They could be heavy and thundery, but there's a lot of dry weather, and temperatures typically low double figures, low teens. Let's look at Saturday. It's not a great day. It is going to turn very wet through the day. There is some clearance later on, but I fancy there'll be more rain into the evening as well, so don't think it's totally done as we head through the end of the afternoon. Temperatures on Saturday, bit of a mixed bag actually, and also the winds picking up. You can see again in a couple of spots as that comes through, could see gusts of 40 miles an hour or more. The bigger picture into next weekend, or next week I should say, is that Sunday is breezy, but it is drier, and it looks like it'll be like that for Monday as well. There are still some frontal systems to move in for Tuesday and Wednesday. So again, do not think we're done with the wet weather, but tomorrow is certainly much better. Saturday's the wet one. Sunday, bonfire night, could be pretty decent actually.
We want more of that kind of weather that's behind you, don't we?
We do.
That's all from us. I'll be back with the late news at 10:30. Goodbye.